Hi everyone, how are we? My name is Kylie Porter. I'm here at the Working Women's Centre, and we're very happy today to bring you this presentation about your rights at work and your rights in Centrelink as part of the Feast Festival. So just a bit of housekeeping first up. I'm hoping that you can all hear me okay. I don't have myself on mute. That's a great start. And I'll just ask Dina as well to test that we can hear her as okay as well.
Yes, hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. Sorry that you can't see me.
That's okay. There's always a technical hitch or two, isn't there? But look, so we're going to have a chat today about our workplace rights, and then Dina will talk to you about your rights with dealing with Centrelink. So yes, as I was saying, please feel free to ask questions. You'll see that there's a Q&A chat down the bottom there. So you can type your questions in there and we'll try our best to answer them. Just keep in mind, obviously, we'd love to hear about your questions and perhaps your experiences, but obviously if you do need personal advice, we are available afterwards if you'd like to ring our respective services and make an appointment to actually give you personal advice. So I'll get started and try and share this PowerPoint. All right, so hopefully you can all see that okay. And I'm not sure, I think we can still see Dina. I'll try and put myself on the camera. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but I will just keep speaking. Yeah, welcome, as I said. There we go. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that we are streaming today from the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. So firstly, I just wanted to share a little bit about our service here at the Working Women's Centre. So we are a non-government organisation, and we've been around since the 70s. And we are here to provide free and confidential information, advice and representation to vulnerable workers in South Australia about their rights at work. And I'd just like to emphasise that although we are called the Working Women's Centre, we are funded to help people of all gender identities, including men and non-binary people and every other gender identity. So although, yeah, we traditionally hold onto that Working Women's Centre name, we're certainly here to support all of you. Okay, so I would just speak a bit today about some of the most common calls we get from people in the LGBTIQA community around, what happens at work. As I said at the beginning, I'll be focusing on your rights at work, and then Dina will continue on to be talking about your rights at Centrelink. And again, if you do have a particular question, please feel free to pop that into the share, the Q&A chat. So I'm just going to try and get the screen back to myself so you can actually see me talking. Okay. So can you see me on the big screen? Sorry, everyone. I know clearly I'm a bit new to this. Oh, good. Thank you, Olympia. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, people. Good. I'll continue talking then. Look, so we'll be looking a bit about the common issues that we get from callers in the LGBTI community here at the Working Women's Centre. And I'll be discussing a bit about what your rights at work are, legally speaking, but also just a little bit about how to practically handle those situations at work, because quite often there is a bit of a, a grey line about what is the right thing to do, how can I best handle this in my workplace without making things more uncomfortable for myself. And when does it get to the point when you really should perhaps consider getting advice from one of us and actually going down a legal path. So we'll be discussing sexual harassment, workplace bullying and harassment, and also discrimination. So, fundamentally, you do have the right to be safe and feel safe at work. And those rights arise, legally speaking, under the Fair Work Act, under state and federal discrimination laws, and under other legislation like the Sex Discrimination Act, as well as occupational health and safety laws as well that exist to keep you safe mentally and of course physically at work. So there's various frameworks that exist that employers are obliged to uphold to keep you feeling safe and respected at work, so that you're able to do your best work. So I'm going to start talking about workplace bullying. This is a very common question we get at the centre, and before I go into the definition of it, I just thought I'd speak a bit generally about the kinds of calls that we get, and I guess the kind of experiences myself and other people I know have had as well. It can be really, I guess people in the LGBTI community will know, like, there's occasions where you're just feeling like you're not quite respected, but is that actually bullying? Or when does it cross the line into the legal definition of bullying, and when should you actually take action about it? So I guess I'm not sure, like I said, please feel free to share anything that you might have come across where you're not quite sure how you could have reacted in that situation. But an example comes to mind of perhaps a one-off, slight snide comment or something like that about yourself or about gay people generally. One particular instance is not pleasant, and it might not be enough to make a complaint over, but what I'd suggest is at least to keep a note of that incident, just in case it happens more often. And that way, if it does become a repeated behaviour of bullying, you've got that documentation to fall back on. And also, of course, make sure you've got support in the workplace as well. So we'll go into just the legal definition of workplace bullying. It is when a person or group of people repeatedly act unreasonably towards yourself or a group of workers. So it could be about you individually, or it could be about you and your colleagues who might, all be part of the LGBTIQ community. And that behaviour is creating a risk to your health and safety. So examples there can be, there's obvious ones like behaving aggressively, clearly excluding people from work-related events, really particularly picking on people in terms of making them do more work than other people or harder tasks, or pressuring someone to behave inappropriately, or teasing, practical jokes, all those kind of things. Again, I think it's a difficult question to know, to answer for yourself, and legally speaking about when it does cross the line into bullying. And I'd encourage you, if you're feeling like any of those things are happening, please give us a call for some advice so we can discuss with you both how to keep yourself safe, but also things you can do to keep yourself safe at work. It's also important to know what isn't bullying. So reasonable management action that's carried out in a reasonable way isn't bullying. So that might be when your employer discusses with you about your poor performance, or if you're subject to disciplinary action, or is giving you instructions about the way to do your work. like I said, it can be difficult if you're also feeling bullied by that person on the basis of your identity. But there are certain things that are obviously unpleasant when a manager might have to have a hard discussion with you, but they're not. There's exceptions under the laws that, and a boss does sometimes have to have difficult discussions with their employees, and that isn't defined as bullying. So again, if you do feel like you've been bullied, please do give us a call and seek some advice. But the most fundamentally important thing is to make sure you're safe. If you're not feeling safe in the workplace, you're in a physical danger, please know that you have the right to leave and seek support and seek advice. Again, keep a written record of what's been happening, the who, what, when, and where. That will all come in handy if you do need to file an actual claim. And check if your workplace has a workplace bullying policy. If you're in a larger workplace, they often do have those kind of policies. However, we know that it can be extremely difficult if you're in a small business kind of workplace where they might not have all those HR support to have those kind of policies, but they should still do what is necessary to keep the workplace safe and respectable. So steps after that, if you feel safe to do so, and that's very important, you can make a formal complaint to your boss or to your HR department, depending on what your policy said that the next steps are. It might be enough to have that informal chat with your boss around how you're feeling unsafe, or what someone might have said about you. They might not realize it's going on and be able to help you intervene in that situation. Other people might think, well, realistically, if I go dobbing on this person, is it going to make it worse for myself? It's a difficult question to answer, and often you in the workplace do know what's best for you in that situation. You may choose to just discuss it with the bully yourself. We suggest, if you do choose to do that, try and approach it in a calm way. And make sure you have a witness present, so someone there to back up, what you've said to them and what they've said to you back. And again, it may be the case that the person hasn't realised what they've said has upset you, and you may be able to sort it out without taking it further. But of course, know that you're not under any obligation to do that yourself. If you don't feel safe to do that or feel capable of doing that, of course, report it to your manager. And of course, seek advice from us. We're here to help, or your union. Okay, so just checking in. Did anyone have any questions around bullying to start with? No, that's fine. I'll keep going. Whoops, I've gone backwards. I thought I'd go next to sexual harassment. Again, that can be something that LGBTIQA people are subject to in the workplace, and different kinds of harassment as well, I guess, compared to other people. The definition is there for you on the screen. Sexual harassment is an unwelcome sexual advance or request for sexual favours, unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature, which makes you offended, humiliated, or intimidated by that behaviour. And there's a list of examples there. Some of them everyone will recognise as clear examples of sexual harassment, like inappropriate physical contact, suggestive comments or jokes, having explicit pictures in the workplace, like having, the cliched pin-up girl inside a work locker or in the snack room, requests for sex, intrusive questioning about your private life or body, sexually explicit emails or text messages. All of those things are sexual harassment. And sometimes it happens where your employer or colleague might contact you outside of work hours, but if it's connected to your work and it's arisen out of a work context, that can still be defined as sexual harassment in the workplace. So I might just stop sharing for a minute. Look, I just wanted to speak a bit about sexual harassment in terms of people in the LGBTI community. And, you know, I identify as that as well. I think often what we hear and what we experience in the workplace is around, in terms of sexual harassment, is this idea that LGBTIQ identities are often sexualized in the broader society and community, and people who haven't been educated or don't know anyone who's LGBTI or queer have this misconception that our identities are focused on sex, and that you know, because, you know, I might be a lesbian, clearly like that is my whole identity and I must talk about sex a lot, and, you know, because I identify as lesbian in the workplace means that I must be okay to talk about, you know, my private life at work. Obviously that's completely wrong and inappropriate. Sexual harassment is also more commonly reported by women, LGBTIQ women in the workplace. Of course, it doesn't, not only women or other identities, and men as well can be subject of inappropriate questioning by their colleagues or employers or customers. So yeah, I just thought I'd just share for a minute about some comments I've had in the past and where I've felt uncomfortable and where I've felt like, you know, maybe I don't mind sharing a little bit in terms to educate my colleagues. So for instance, back in my former role, which is in quite a conservative government department, I wasn't out at work for a very long time. And, you know, it was really, I did personally come out later in life. So I went through a lot of, you know, thinking and identifying and coming to that realization myself long before I was ready to talk about it at work. But around the time when I was starting to feel like it was important to me to come out at work, my manager at the time made a few kind of off jokes about me being a lesbian. I can't even honestly remember the context now, but it was enough to make me feel really uncomfortable. But I otherwise had a really good relationship with this manager. And so I kind of, eventually I thought, look, I can't just let this continue. I do want to say something, but I don't feel like it's so serious that I want to make a formal complaint or anything. So I did actually pull him aside and say, look, I noticed that you've made these comments. I just wanted you to know that it's making me feel really uncomfortable. And to be honest, like, you've made these jokes about being a lesbian. Actually, yes, that's exactly what I'm going through. And he was quite shocked. He had no idea and immediately apologized. And from there, it ended up being quite good. Like, he explained that he'd never met anyone that was gay before and he wanted to do the right thing by me and support me at work. I was also going through a lot of, I was quite depressed at that point. I had other mental health issues going on, so he wanted to support me from that point of view as well. So it ended up turning out well. I do find sometimes as well that the pressures on us as the gay person at work to kind of do that educating for people. And I just wanted to say, I think it's up to you whether you feel comfortable to do that or not. It's not up to you to educate, but however, you know, if it makes you feel more accepted at work and you feel comfortable doing that, then yeah, I think it is definitely possible to have a respectful conversation about that and kind of awaken people to what it's like coming out at work, etc. So yeah, I hope you found that example interesting. The other side of it, of course, is the insults, the being targeted, and things that are not okay. And I thought I'd just share an example about my wife. She is the only gay person on site and also the only woman in her workplace. She works in a male-dominated construction industry worksite. And I know it's really difficult for her because she is the only woman on site and she is the only gay person. And it's hard enough for her being the only woman, let alone being the only gay person. And at times, like especially going back to say when the marriage equality debate, shall we say, was going on, it was a topic, you know, everyone was like, oh, they were discussing it, and it was extremely uncomfortable for her. People would be making snide comments about faggots and such in the lift, you know, in her hearing. People would be asking her inappropriate questions about our relationship. And yeah, it was tough. And unfortunately, she didn't feel able to report that to her workplace because she felt it would just make it harder for her. And I respect that. We have very different work lives. I'm at the Working Women's Centre surrounded by women and feminists. She's surrounded by your typical tradie blokes. So look, I guess I just wanted to say, you're the centre of the story, however it is for you at work. But if you don't feel able to speak up at work, please call us or your union or the community legal centres for some advice. And even if you don't feel empowered to speak up at work, at least get that support around yourself and educate yourself around your rights and what you can do if and when you feel comfortable. Thank you. Thank you for the nice comments there. I think I'll go back now. I did go on a little bit longer than I thought I might there, but look, I'll just jump back into discrimination in the workplace. Go back to sharing my screen. Okay, share, there we go. Okay, so yeah, again, just covering over, oh, did I skip a screen? No. So yes, your employer, whether or not you feel comfortable speaking up, in the ideal world, your employer would already have these supports and policies in place. So they should already have these kind of policies in place in terms of OH&S, at least around bullying. It would be ideal if they did have a more extensive policy that addresses LGBTQI people specifically, but you know, in a good workplace, they should be consulting with you and other workers around if those policies are working, and making sure that they're setting a high standard of workplace behaviour through their conduct policies and training. And yeah, I just, again, if you feel comfortable, you should know that you do have the right to make a complaint or inquiry about your employment to your boss or employer without suffering an adverse action. Yeah, practically speaking, I know it can feel like if you speak up that you will get further targeted, but legally you do have that right. And of course, I'd encourage you to stand up for yourself if you're able to do so. Again, just a bit more around what steps can be taken to protect yourself. Keep notes of what's happening. Like I said, that's very important, and make sure you have that support. If you've got text, screenshots, emails, keep a record of those, or even if you don't have that, that's fine as well. Just at the end of the day, write down notes around what was said and by whom and who else was there. So at least you've got that contemporaneous record. If you're feeling particularly uncomfortable discussing things with your boss, you might like to send them an email or a text so you've got proof of that conversation in writing. Again, you know, that will show in the future that you've tried to raise your complaints or the situation at work. And, you know, if you do feel like you're being affected by what's going on, please do seek help from your GP or mental health professional to discuss any impacts that the bullying or discrimination is having on you. That can be, of course, firstly, you know, getting the help you need, but if it does get so bad that you do actually suffer an injury at work in terms of injury to your mental health, like anxiety or depression brought on by what's happened at work, you can lodge something called a workers' compensation claim and it would be important, or it would help at least if you've discussed with your doctor along the way around what's been happening at work. And yeah, just finally, please do give us a call and get advice before you do anything rash by resigning, because it can affect what legal avenues you do have to make a legal claim about these kind of things. So yeah, please give us a call before you resign. If you don't feel well enough or able to go to work, just remember you can go to the doctor and get a doctor's certificate for that day or that week while you're away from work, getting advice and getting help. So I just will finish with discrimination in the workplace. So we've talked about bullying and sexual harassment. You can also, of course, be discriminated in the workplace by your employer or by a prospective employer around the range of attributes there that are protected by law, and sex and sexual orientation are two of those things. So again, yeah, so that can be direct discrimination or indirect discrimination. So direct discrimination could be something like refusing to hire you or promote you on the basis of your sexuality or your sexual orientation or your gender identity. Or it could be indirect, so that perhaps the policies of your workplace aren't fair and they don't work for instance, you and your same-sex partner the same way that they would work for a straight couple. So sometimes, for instance, workplaces might have some kind of employee benefit that, your husband and wife can get discounted travel or a gym membership or something, and the way it's worded might not be equally available to your same-sex partner. So that's called indirect discrimination. So there's two different kinds that are both protected by the law. And it's also important to note that employers can be held legally responsible for discrimination or harassment by their employees. So say you're being discriminated against by your direct manager at work. If the head office, your employer doesn't prevent that from happening, they can be held liable for the actions of that manager directly. So again, look, if you're feeling discriminated against at work, please do give us a call and we can discuss a bit more closely around what your situation is and what the best path for you is to do. Again, make sure that you're keeping those records so that when you are seeking advice, we can kind of work through what happened and when. I'll just briefly touch on the kind of legal avenues you can take, and it can be quite complicated. So I'll just briefly touch on them so you're aware. So you can go to the Fair Work Commission, the Human Rights Commission, or the South Australian Equal Opportunity Commission. Now, the Fair Work Commission, it's important to know that if you are dismissed from work and it's relating to discrimination or any dismissal really, you have 21 days to lodge that claim in the Fair Work Commission from the effective date of your dismissal. So it's really important to get advice quickly. Many people don't know that you've only got that short time to take action. So if you remember one thing today, please tell everyone if you're dismissed at work, get advice quickly, because you do only have 21 days to put in that claim in the Fair Work Commission. So in the Fair Work Commission, you can lodge a claim called General Protections, which is where you've been discriminated against at work and you've suffered an adverse action. And that adverse action, I think I've actually got on the next slide. Yeah, can be something like a dismissal, a refusal to engage or employ someone. It could be that your shifts have been cut, you've been demoted, your pay has been docked somehow, or you're doing lesser duties. So it can be a range of things, but basically you've suffered some kind of loss at work due to you raising a workplace right and that includes the right not to be discriminated against. There's other grounds as well, which we won't go into today, but they include a temporary absence, like taking sick leave, your right to industrial activity, or making a complaint or inquiry in regards to your employment. Again, it's a bit complicated. Call us and we can go through it. The other two avenues are the Human Rights Commission and the South Australian Equal Opportunity Commission. And they're more broadly about, if you've been discriminated against at work. So with the Human Rights Commission, there's 6 months to lodge that claim. In the Equal Opportunity Commission, there's 12 months. And those are from the last date of discrimination or the last date in the series of acts of discrimination. And that in itself can be quite a technical point of law. So again, it's probably best to give us a call sooner rather than later. And even if you're not ready to go ahead and lodge a claim yet, we can give you some advice in the meantime and tell you about the time limits and keep in touch with you that way. So look, I think that's kind of completed my section of this presentation around some of the common rights at work and what can be done about them. Do anyone have any questions for me before I hand over to Dina to talk about Centrelink? I think so. Well, not to worry. If you do have any, please, we might have some time at the end to answer some more questions, or of course you can give us a call for an individual chat. So I'll hand over now to Dina to speak to Centrelink and your rights with Centrelink. Now, unfortunately, her webcam isn't working, so I will be managing the PowerPoint. Please do bear with us if we have any little technical difficulties, but I think we'll be going okay. So I'll start sharing my screen again, and over to you, Dina.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Kylie. That was a great presentation, very informative, and I think very great in highlighting particularly what you said towards the end about the timeframes and making sure that you sort of, act in a way that doesn't prevent you from seeking further access to some sort of a resolution. So thank you for that. Now, moving on to our topic, Centrelink. So hi everyone, and thank you very much for having me today and giving me and our service the opportunity to be a part of this presentation. I'll just start with giving a little bit of a background on myself. I am a solicitor in the Social Security legal team at Uniting Communities Law Centre. I've been working with the Uniting Communities for over 2 years. In addition to the social security space, I also do some youth criminal matters within our generalist legal team. Prior to my employment here, I worked at Services Australia in the Centrelink division. I was there for over 10 years, and I did hold varied roles, from customer service advisor to an investigator in serious non-compliance, as well as in the multicultural division where I assisted customers from culturally diverse backgrounds. So what does our service do? I'll give a bit of a brief overview of what we do. So we're a community legal centre, and we've been operating since 1992, previously called Central Community Legal, and then moved over to Uniting Communities Law Centre as a name. We provide free legal advice funded by both the state and federal governments, and we do provide assistance in a range of areas of law which are listed on the slide. We do have a criteria how people can access our service. Generally speaking, it is available to those who are financially disadvantaged. So if you are on a Centrelink benefit or another government benefit, you would qualify, or if you're seeking to get onto a payment and you have no other source of income or are vulnerable. Our services for social security, consumer credit, elder abuse and the disability advocacy are statewide services. And our generalist service is an area which deals with the criminal matters, civil, family law, and that's a zoned service. And the area we cover is central Adelaide and the surrounding suburbs and the hills area. And there are other community legal services which do service other geographical areas, and that includes Southern Legal, Northern Legal and Westside. But in the first instance, if you do ever require legal advice in a different space, feel free to contact us and we'll be able to refer you to the appropriate service. In addition, we also have an outreach service at Adelaide University, which operates weekly on during each semester. So Kylie, if I can just ask you to move on to the next slide. Thank you. Great, thanks. So moving on now to the Social Security Service. We have solicitors and volunteers who assist with just about all types of Centrelink payments that are on offer. But the most common types of inquiries our service deals with are in relation to disability support pension and debts, particularly more recently robo-debts. We also get a number of inquiries regarding preclusion periods that result from compensation or work cover payments or redundancy and severance packages and how that might affect access to Centrelink entitlements. In addition to that, we also have an outreach service through the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, which is an external appeals service on a weekly basis where applicants who've applied for this review can seek free legal advice in preparation for their tribunal hearing. So Kylie, if I can ask you now to move on as well. Great, thank you. Let me just see. So how can we assist in terms of when you've got issues with Centrelink? I guess that it's again similar to what Kylie sort of pointed out earlier. It's you need to, if you do identify an issue or a grievance or some sort of something you disagree with Centrelink, the sooner you contact or try to deal with it, the better. This is because there are also certain timeframes and limits which need to be adhered to when you do initiate some sort of review or appeal with Centrelink, because it may impact on the outcome that you're seeking, and maybe any arrears or entitlements that you might be able to access might be affected depending on how long it takes for you to initiate that review. For us to proceed, we often need a decision by Centrelink, so a rejection letter or a letter informing you of a debt, for example. From there, it's our role to assess whether the decision is legally correct, and if so, to ensure that you understand why that decision is correct, or to assist you in commencing in the internal review process with Centrelink in the first instance. The internal review is undertaken by an authorised review officer, and the review may produce three outcomes. Either the decision is upheld, or it can be overturned, or it can be sent back to the original decision maker for this decision to be reassessed. This is an important process because without the internal review processes having been exhausted, you can't proceed to an external review at the tribunal, okay, at the AAT. So if the decision is upheld, or that you're unsuccessful, this is then where the tribunal is a further option of appeal. And there are two levels of appeal within the AAT. The first one is a tier 1 level and the second one's a level 2 hearing. And we assist with both representation in at both levels, depending of course on the merit of the matter and our capacity to assist, as well as meeting other qualifiers like I mentioned earlier. And another way where people can seek some sort of recourse and I guess overturn of their decision is through applying for what's called a compensation for detriment caused by defective administration, or a CDDA. So we assist clients with this process on a number of occasions, and we've had some really good outcomes for our clients over the years. And this is a good avenue, for example, if a time frame had been missed, for instance, only because it hadn't been picked up within the timeframes of when a poor decision had been made, for example, by Centrelink, and it's been established that there has been, in fact, defective administration. This is the avenue one would take to seek to have that remedied. So that's why this is something that's not often thought of, but it can provide a good solution to a dispute. Finally, we also assist with preparing freedom of information requests to Centrelink. And although people think that it's a quite easy and straightforward process to do on their own, it is, but Centrelink is such, the legislation is so huge, and the systems that are used are so varied, and the screens, and it's a very complex area to deal with at the best of times when it's smooth sailing, let alone when you're trying to find some form of error. So we have seen some FOI applications that, yes, they've been so broad that people get inundated with a lot of paperwork, and it makes things really difficult for them to actually, you know, seek the outcome that they're looking for, or at least the answers. So it is important that you do that right, and we have that skill and knowledge and experience to be able to support you through that process. So Kylie, thanks. If you can just move on to the next slide. Thank you. So I guess moving on to probably the more relevant aspect of today's presentation, let's consider how Centrelink deals with some of the topics that I have here listed on the slide. I'm also happy to take any questions from the audience on this topic, or any other Centrelink issues that you may have. So Centrelink is a federal government body, and it falls under Services Australia, and it is therefore obliged to adhere to the principles that were introduced in 2013 under the Australian Government Guidelines of the Recognition of Sex and Gender. Access to Centrelink should be consistent and in line with these guidelines, and should be always non-discriminatory. So if we look at some of these topics, so access to services, well, all calls to and from Centrelink are recorded, okay? For this reason, this is why I actively encourage people to engage with Centrelink in this way. I know that there's a bit of pushback because time is a real, you know, the wait times to get through can be quite excessive, but waiting in a service centre can be quite excessive too, and difficult. So at least if you are in your home or a space of your choice, it might allow you to do other things while your call's on loudspeaker and, you know, you're waiting to speak to someone. The recording may provide some peace of mind if at a later stage it may need to be relied on as a part of a dispute, and those recordings can always be requested through a freedom of information request. Okay, yeah, gender. So there is a clear directive in Centrelink policy which states how staff should deal with inquiries in relation to gender identification and requesting for gender change and identity. So traditionally, gender is a form of identification, though it shouldn't be a barrier to access any payments, and there are other ways in which identification can be established. There's also a number of ways to verify a gender, in addition to traditional methods in terms of like driver's license, passport and birth certificate. So a letter from a registered GP or a psychologist will serve such a requirement, and that should be sufficient. In terms of living arrangements, this does by Social Security law need to be assessed, as entitlements and rates of pay are affected by one's living arrangements, okay? But Centrelink have got clear and respectful guidelines in how this should be done. The language is to be inclusive. There's not to be any assumptions in terms of, you know, housemates, just because they may be all the same gender or opposite, different gender, that there might be an assumption. And as part of the 2009 changes to the recognition of same-sex couples, there was a lot of education and training in terms of using particular terms such as partner or spouse in place of terms like wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. When we look at family units, again, the same-sex couples are recognised and are expected to disclose their status as being partnered. And this again is due to the rates of payment being affected depending on a relationship status. Okay, with pronoun preference, almost all Centrelink letters are quite generic and are often not personalised. So this may result in some of the letters you receive, first of all, come across as even rude or abrupt, but also it may not reflect your pronoun preference, even if you have indicated that in the past. But you can ask for this to be noted on your file and that you're referred to as the pronouns of your preference. But just note that sometimes not all service advisors, officers, when they do talk to Centrelink, when you are talking to Centrelink, don't read the notes on file. I know that's bad, but that is the case. So there is no harm in respectfully reminding them of this request and just noting that that's been pointed out. Also, I think yes, changing your name. So a change of name request must be accompanied by a change of name certificate or any other acceptable change of name document. And this evidence should be recorded on the system. Now, there can be other circumstances where some documents might not be available, so alternative proof of change of name may be accepted. And for the identity to be confirmed, main aspects of identity, such as the name and surname and date of birth, must be taken from an authoritative source and verified. Okay, and just note that names that a person was previously known by will appear on their record, and providing a history of name changes. Okay, but that's only on the Centrelink system. It would not appear anywhere else. Yes, that's what I had to say on those. Also, in thinking about today's presentation, I thought about what might be potentially frequent barriers that people may encounter when dealing with Centrelink, and I would hope that no one has ever faced any discrimination in their dealings with Centrelink. But if you have, I just want to go through how our service might be of assistance. Our service is, though, primarily concerned with how Centrelink applies the law and facts to decisions Centrelink make. Okay, so if you feel in any way that you've been discriminated against, in the first instance, please contact us. What we would do then is assess if the decision that Centrelink has made is in accordance with the relevant legislation and whether they have applied and assessed all the information you have provided in accordance with the law. And if this is not the case, we would assist you by submitting an appeal on your behalf, requesting the decision be reviewed and why. And then depending on the outcome, or in some cases irrespective of the outcome, if you wish to make that a complaint about the discrimination you feel you've experienced, you can do so in the following ways. So one would be to make a complaint to Centrelink via the customer feedback line. In doing so, you will be asked to provide as much detail as possible about the incident, including the date and time, how the contact was made, whether it was in a service centre or over the phone. This is important, and this is why I stress that it's important to try and keep your interactions over the phone with Centrelink, because this is a good way to highlight something that may have occurred in this space. Those phone calls, if you do feel that there's been a discrimination, so while you can make that complaint through the customer feedback line, you too can also ask for a copy of that phone call through a Freedom of Information request in any case. Your second option could be to make a complaint to the Commonwealth Ombudsman for further investigation, and one doesn't, you don't have to do one or the other, you can do both. And you also have the option to make a complaint to the Australian Human Rights Commission. You could also finally seek assistance from the South Australian Equal Opportunity Commission, but this is a state-based service, so I'm not sure to what extent they would be able to assist in relation to any discrimination regarding a Centrelink issue or decision. I think that's pretty much, I haven't been checking to see if there are questions being asked, so here we go.
so much. That was really, yeah, really interesting to hear about the different views and paths, and yeah, even just using the call service rather than emailing. Did anyone have any Centrelink specific questions? Perhaps while you're thinking about those and perhaps typing them in, and answer a couple of others that have come through. So one of them was, what is the most common type of discrimination you see coming into the clinic related to LGBTQI plus people? Well, I can speak to that. Yeah, really interesting question. I think probably the most common calls I've gotten are where being, say, dismissed, and they feel like it's probably because their bosses say homophobic, because there's been a few comments made over the years, but you know, and that's what I mean. It's such a great area of pinning down, you know, enough, you know, what is bullying, what is enough legal evidence or to go with that actual discrimination claim. And in those, the couple I'm thinking of, it's been a stronger case for them to go down an unfair dismissal path rather than a discrimination path. But yeah, we certainly have got other calls, just sexual harassment calls as well, where people have been sexually harassed at work. Yeah, but yeah, without going into unnecessary details, I guess, yeah, both from women, from non-binary people, and even had a call from a man recently who'd been sexually harassed at work. So look, yeah, I guess those are probably the most common ones. But again, yeah, I hope what I've said just there hasn't discouraged anyone from seeking advice. Like, even if there was one thing that happened and it was, you know, a while ago, please give us a call and we can discuss those time limits with you, and, you know, the parameters around, you know, what is the best way for you to handle your situation.
Yeah, I think in terms of,
sorry,
I was just going to say also from our service,
yeah.
I think, yeah, sexual harassment in the workplace is probably the recurring theme if in relation to this question. But again, it's not the area of law I would be dealing with, so I can't really comment on the more wider sort of aspects of our space, because that obviously would potentially might be a employment law, which would be then handed to our generalist team. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We had another question around a researcher. They're interested to know what areas of law we think are lacking in academia with regards to LGBTIQ plus protections. Honestly, that's probably a bit broader than what we can discuss today, but in terms of the broader life and work protections for LGBTIQ plus people. But in regards to work, the thing that springs to mind perhaps could do with some more focus is the rights and protections of transgender people, non-binary people and intersex people in the workplace. I know that those people in particular can have poorer work employment outcomes due to the kind of discrimination they face in the workplace, in the employment process as well. I mean, the interviewing process, recruitment processes. So I think that's probably the from the community perspective, the least kind of understood area. Definitely more education is needed, I think, in terms of workplaces having appropriate and supportive policies to encourage transgender, intersex and non-binary people, especially in the workplace, to be able to do their best work amongst colleagues and customers that respect them fully and properly. I've got another question here. Able to provide general advice to someone regarding Centrelink eligibility, or is it more limited to advice when Centrelink has made a decision which needs to be reviewed?
Look, It depends what the general advice to someone regarding Centrelink eligibility, what you mean by that, because I guess if it's to do with sort of the process of applying, at the end of the day, you have to test your eligibility. And so we can talk about scenarios, we could talk how it may go, but we don't review someone's application, for instance. We don't review if the supporting information and documentation will be sufficient. We don't even assist with the application process. So that's what makes it difficult to provide that general advice, because actually it's a good and a bad thing. The good thing about the Social Security legislation is that it actually does allow for assessing one's individual circumstances. So it's very hard to give general advice because you don't want to exclude anyone from maybe testing their eligibility. And that's why sometimes people are very critical of the Centrelink website. But on the flip side, I can see why it is so general and broad, because it's actually it's trying to avoid eliminating opportunity for people to apply just because they might read something they might not fall into the criteria. But it doesn't matter, even if you were to sort of apply in any case for a Centrelink payment and were rejected, there is still scope to correct that in light of the outcome. So I guess in the first instance, no harm in calling us. We can see if we can assist, and maybe sometimes it's just about clarifying something. So yeah, I would say definitely feel free to contact us, which incidentally, Kylie, I forgot to ask you to go to that slide which has our contact details, but I can maybe do that later.
We do come up to that. There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're welcome to reach out, no problem at all.
Thank you. I might just finish with one other question that came through in the registration emails, which was around what kind of collective actions can people take, in the workplace to help provide a supportive workplace for themselves, to paraphrase. Look, again, I think it's really important to get support from your colleagues, but if you don't have any colleagues at work that you feel that you are able to confide in or speak to, we both our services do exist to give you advice, but also I'd encourage you to check out your union. Most unions also have like a rainbow collective within the union, so that way you can get advice and support from people who are in your industry, who might also face the same kind of issues in the same kind of workplaces as you. But yeah, you can get that support for your workplace, but from an external source. So yeah, I encourage you to check out your unions as well. So I think that pretty much wraps us up just on time. You've got the details there for the Uniting Communities Law Centre. And here's some more details for the Working Women's Centre. Yeah, please do check out our socials and all that to keep in touch. Again, if you need an appointment, the numbers are there. Check out our website. It's got lots of fact sheets that you might find handy as well. And yeah, we're actually going to be at the Feast picnic on Sunday. So we'll have a stall there along with the Uniting Communities Law Centre and the Westside Law Centre as well. So please feel free to pop up and say hello if you're there. We'd love to see you. But yeah, again, look, we'll send out an email with a feedback form, so please keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, look, thank you so much for attending today. We are, very thrilled to have been able to give this presentation, and we hope that it's been of help to you, and hope if you've got issues to talk to you more soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.